Yarbe amala katuria bachamon, turkore mas sibliandro koyaramulo, totore kawura kamon. Yavahum nia kalabas vishiliandre cherein. Yahweh, we surrender unto your presence, your holy and divine protection. As Yeshua, we thank you that you establish a hedge of protection around this time for blessing and increase. And we welcome your instruction and teaching through our sister Pamela to bring clarity and understanding of how to extend and increase this message to reach to others. And go ahead, Pamela.
Oh, thank you. All right. Andy Ulig and myself have been doing the website and Facebook, and we started this past week with posting 2 to 3 times during the week. Now, what we're doing this for is as the comparison to likes and shares. Likes are great, but it doesn't bring in new people into finding Grace Healing. So when we post, we'd love to have you all, even if it's just 1 time a week or 3 times a week, share it with your Facebook friends. Just post it, because this way it gives Yeshua a chance to come through and bring other people through to Grace Healing. So we can bring in more people to Grace Healing, into Yeshua's message. And I thank you for sharing, because this will reach far more many people than the likes will. And look forward to all the postings. We'll be putting up some of the YouTubes, some of the prayers, and then we'll probably have either Ina or Larry give their own receivings once in that 3rd posting. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. And again, what she's trying to clarify is the difference between a like and a share. To like doesn't get it to move anywhere. To share expands it to your network, which expands it to other networks. And then people out there that are in need, that are beyond our reach, verbally or association, or if you come upon a friend that is needing something or some form of healing, they would be introduced to the nature of what Grace Healing is led to bring. So we just want people to kind of know that if a person has a pulse or they breathe, the reality is you have a right to share all things that come from Grace Healing openly with others. And my brother Dan today, beautiful brother, spiritual brother up in upstate New York, he actually asked permission to share the recording with somebody. I'm like, Dan, you have to understand that there is no need to ask permission. I surrender. God rises within me. If there's a message that comes forth, it is not my own to possess. It is not Grace Healing's to possess. It is available for all people to receive. So in that, we're going to go engage just in prayer right now and shift to, and Pamela, thank you so much for sharing this, because it is something that can be easily overlooked when we're talking on all the spiritual stuff. We forget about the logistics of the worldly things. So I'm going to just shift into prayer now, and we'll just go into the prayer of instruction. So if we can just open our hearts into Yahweh's presence, breathing deep. And for any who remain in the call, please *6 on your phone, and that will mute your phone. And that way, if you *6 to unmute, I can see and realize that you have something you need to ask or something you would like to share. So we all open into Yahweh's presence. And we breathe. Hablando la camundro colia muliore calvos masapio trocomium, pulieli emieco shaforomo convido coera pusnum. Hablando hagle contro comies masapie teleumrium, chuniele camunio shoyeru Yesu. Hablando la camucu Yesu eu. Yahweh, God and Creator, Yeshua, Holy Redeemer, Abun, Spirit of God's breath that resides within us. We offer thanksgiving, praise, and worship unto your Spirit, trusting and knowing that you are here, deep within each and every single one of us. That even in the words spoken, when they would hear Yeshua speak, they would listen to him within the temple. They would stand there just astounded as they would hear and know the instruction he provided as rising from within themselves. It was like they were not hearing the words that were coming of his mouth, as they were hearing and recognizing truth rising from within them. And they named that, as you've heard previously in the prayer calls, espusia, the deepest parts within. And the reality is God is the deepest part within us. God is the holy blessing, the holy recognition of all things blessed within our lives. And I've seen many instructions coming out recently and over the years past where teachers and sages of the world and different mystics and other instructors out there are providing psychological teaching about the importance of allowing persons to experience negative emotions, to experience the negative side, to experience the suffering, to embrace the suffering. And they're speaking languages like this, and I don't believe they fully understand the nature of their words. And I submit before you in all humility that each time I hear that, it just cuts right across the deepest parts within me saying, no, this is not true. Yes, it's true that we do not want to engage in a false state of positivity, a manufactured state of blessing. But if we understand what it is to be in the espusia, the deepest part within, we wouldn't have to construct a false state of blessing. If we encounter anger, we do not have to embrace anger and act through it. We can surrender into God's presence and release the spirit of anger into God's presence, then embrace God, to know how to look upon the situation not veiled by anger. Yes, the emotional state of anger might continue to rise within us, but we must release the spiritual ground first. If we encounter a situation that fosters guilt or fosters grief even, because that's another one. They were harping on that one constantly about the importance of letting a person just stay in that place of sadness. To really just let them sit in that depression over the grief that they're experiencing. And I'm like, oh my God, listening to this, they don't realize what they're saying. That they're actually telling the person to embrace the spiritual root and not embrace God, because they weren't moving them forward. And I just saw this like this week in 3 different instructional settings where 3 different spiritual teachers were giving this same message. And I'm like going, oh my God, they don't even hear what they're saying. That they're instructing people to specifically reside within grief, to experience what grief has to teach them, to experience what sadness has to bring for instruction, to experience what they can gain from wisdom through depression. And I'm sitting there, and it doesn't even connect with any part of my human brain. It doesn't connect with any part of my spirit or the flesh that is my heart, which is the soul presence of my being upon this earth. I'm like listening to them thinking, and they're teaching these huge crowds of people this stuff. And God, as I was praying, God drew me back to a memory. And I know I've shared this with you before, but as I was on a radio program, and I forget whether it was in Connecticut or Rhode Island, but I was on a radio program, and I was being interviewed by a talk show host, and somebody had called in to the call, and their phone banks were kind of blocked up with people calling in, and this woman was so grateful that fear was such a great teacher in her life. And I stopped and asked for her to hold for just a moment, and would she permit me to pray? As I entered into prayer, I just felt this prayer of releasing the spirit of fear that she might see the wholeness of truth within the measure of God's presence revealed, who was the instructor in the moment, not the fear that she encountered first. And I just asked her, would you please describe to me the situation, a situation in your life that you think actually taught you, that you actually think fear was the teacher in the moment. And she described a situation where she was entering upon the highway. As she came into the highway, she was pulling out, and a truck started to lose control. And as the truck was swerving, another car, and she saw around her an accident beginning to unfold of which she was in the midst of it. And she froze in what you and I understand within this call, the spirit of fear. From within fear, she was frozen, locked tight to the steering wheel, could not move. The only thing she remembers is at one point where the activity was increasing around her, she remembers at one point, all of a sudden, her arms moved. She felt a sense of peace come over her. Her arms just moved. She turned left, turned right, turned straight, and went right through the middle. All things unfolded. Cars started bumping, and she watched the accident unfold in her rearview mirrors as she went through unscathed. And in my understanding, I'm sitting there going, well, isn't it amazing that the spirit of fear rose up, froze you within your position, and you had nothing you could do in response to it? God enters in through grace, clarity, wisdom, and overtakes your body in a way that you wouldn't naturally do, forces your hands left, forces your hands right, forces your hands straight, right through the midst of the chaos, and you emerge out the other side of this accident unscathed, and the only thing you can draw from that is the fear was the teacher, when the fear desired to hold you bound there so that you became part of the accident. This is the difference. Fear did not teach anything in that moment. God emerged by grace, overtook his daughter's physical form, blessed her to do things she didn't even know her body capable of doing, and brought her through this potential of harm unscathed. And the first thing her spiritual awareness, or her instructed awareness by man, taught her was, oh my God, fear is so awesome, it's such a great teacher. And we begin to exalt the spiritual nature instead of offering thanksgiving to God. Now, there was no judgment in the call, and in that moment, she was prayerfully thankful, blessed, and honestly shifted to a new understanding. She was like, oh my God, I can't believe I wasn't aware of that. Now, this same understanding is applicable to every single thing that does not align with the nature or attributes of God. So again, if anger presents itself, anger is not the teacher. Yahweh, through Yeshua, rising within you, is the teacher. If grief presents, grief is not the teacher. Grief is rising to be recognized, to be released, and returned into the holy embrace of God, so that you would walk through the grieving process, not influenced by grief, but cared for, loved, and comforted by God's holy embrace. So again, I understand the premise that a person has to process through these things. I understand that when a person touches a place of sadness, that there is a natural order of coming out of that experience of touching the spirit of sadness. But if you would release the spiritual root, spirit of sadness, breathe in God's presence. And as we shared on the number of prayer calls prior to this one, the 7, 7, and 7. 7 simple breaths upon Yahweh's presence. 7 deep and holy breaths upon Yeshua's presence. 7 more deep and holy breaths of Abun, the Spirit of God within you. So the first is Yahweh, recognizing Yahweh above all things, God creator, first, the one thing. 7 breaths, committing and dedicating your whole being, every breath unto God. In that 7 breaths, God reveals to you anything that is not of God, grief, sadness, depression, anxiety, fear, anger, hostility, whatever it is, spirit of hatred. Could be another one that might rise up. As these things rise within you, they are not the teacher. Yahweh reveals them unto you that you would release them, so that his holy wisdom would rise to you in the second 7 breaths, that you're releasing each one of these into Yeshua's presence. Totally embraced in Yeshua's love, return into God's holy design. Then you breathe the Abun, Spirit of God within you, as you move forward in the wisdom that is God's presence. Not the teacher of a spiritual nature. Not the shamanic view as you embrace things of a spiritual nature to bring you instruction. In my understanding, this extends also into further spirit guides or spiritual teachers that are not of this earth. I don't seek any of them. I don't even allow them a place within me. I allow for one thing in me, Yahweh's holy presence. And as I have encountered anything of a heavenly nature, I've only known it to be God's presence because they will never name themselves by name. They will only recognize God so that you might remember and know God, because all pure, blessed, and holy creations within the heavens know their origins as Yahweh. They desire but one thing, for Yahweh's presence to be known and exalted. For they know that that's where all purity of truth, understanding, clarity, and wisdom emerge, and they know that the highest authority under Yahweh is Yeshua. The fullness of life-giving breath, the manifestation of realization of God, actually presents through the physical image of Yeshua. And the life-giving breath that is the Abun, which is resident within us all. So if you encounter anything of a spirit nature, meaning spiritual things that we encounter in life, spirit of judgment, spirit of sadness, spirit of depression, spirit of hatred, spirit of war, spirit of hostility, spirit of aggression, spirit of abuse, any aspect that does not align with the nature of God, it is not the teacher. Yahalal, Yahweh. Yahweh is the God, the teacher, the provider, Abba, the source of all blessing, the purest expression of both feminine and masculine. So that even in our desires, we would be released from the possibility of thinking that the experience upon this earth is the teacher. No, it isn't. The experience upon this earth is merely the pointer to point us back to the teacher, back to our source, Yahweh's presence within. Returning and releasing and relenting any perceptive tie to that which is humanity, or the teachings of previous life existences, the returning to that which we were before the presence of God, prior to entering the veil of humanity. It's about returning to the knowledge that we knew before we came onto this ground. And this is merely the beginning of an instruction that I have to extend over these next weeks to understand the fullness of why we're here, to understand the fullness of how you were first spirit in nature and held absolute clarity, knowledge, and understanding, because you were connected unto God without veil. How you entered into this ground to bring freedom and release to all the spirits we named, those within the order of principalities. Yeshua taught us things of a spiritual nature. He taught us the things of how to function dealing with the things of the spiritual realm, the order of principalities. And we didn't get it. Because we listened to teachers upon the earth that tell us, no. You need to stop and sit there, and you need to process through this sorrow. You need to embrace this sorrow because the sorrow will teach you. Now, to be completely fair here, I've also seen other teachers out there not teaching that. They're not teaching to embrace sorrow because sorrow will teach you. No, they're teaching that people do encounter sorrow and it is not a bad thing, and that is good. It is not a bad thing that you encounter these things. It is not a bad thing that you've encountered sadness. It is not a bad thing that you've encountered grief. It is not a bad thing that you've encountered depression. It is a good and blessed and holy thing that you encounter these things, especially when you realize that you hold from the deepest parts within you, the espusia, the ability to relent and release them into the fullness of God, that they would be restored in the fullness of light. You hold that power. And if you find you can't accomplish it on your own, you reach into the presence of God, seek God, and God will guide you to reach to somebody that will know what you're dealing with, help you to release the things of a spiritual nature, and return to the clarity and wisdom that is God's Holy Spirit, His Habwun, life-giving breath within you, freed of the veils that were limiting your ability to touch clarity, to touch peace, to be freed from desire and moved into understanding. So I pray that each and every one of us would take the true practicality of this offering, that each and every one of us holds the presence of God within us. If we invest ourselves in God's presence, we have access to the most limitless, the most perfect, the most pure expression of knowledge throughout all creation. I pray that each of you are blessed to remember this within you and know that you do hold the word being authority through love, from the espusia, the deepest parts within you. It's not authority through aggression. And I see Ina's joined us in here. I want to open up for just a moment and allow her to speak, to let God's Spirit flow through her to bless each and every one of you, and remembering that even as you hear her speak, remember the espusia that is God's Spirit within you, rising within Ina and greeting her as she speaks, that it is God's Spirit rising within you to greet these words she brings forth. Go for it, Ina.
I'd like to just start in prayer again.
Yes.
Again, as we all breathe, deep. Boshibiakayarviasana Mahayarvuku Suyavyasanianama. Yasyaton. I'd like to share just a little bit. I'm not going to stay on long, but it always rises and waiting to hear exactly how Yeshua would have me to speak. Interesting enough, of everything that was just shared with these precious words that rise up from Larry, the one thing that comes to mind, and I think some of you just know this anyway about me that you've prayed with, is actually that simple, is seeking him first, but being so childlike. As I have engaged in prayer for even those on the call and elsewhere, it's that seeking him first and allowing everything else. It just takes the pressure off of you. It's not about you. It's not about me. It's totally in seeking him first. And as you do that, as you all have heard, it's almost, it's an automatic. It's just like that breathing. And as you breathe, it just surfaces of those things that were just shared by Brother Larry and the things that he spoke on, is centering upon him. And as that comes, and as I've shared before, is once that presence is just that releasing of those spiritual influences, anything, once you release that, and I was sharing earlier, to me, it's almost like a feather. I shared this earlier in a prayer. And it's released off of you of any heaviness and receiving the fullness of his love and his mercy and his grace. And even over time, as I've come into a greater awareness of just receiving that love, being in his presence. He's so sweet and loving and kind and good. It's not forced upon us, but if we just yield and surrender ourselves, whatever it might be, physically, mentally, spiritually, financially, names that you've had put on you over years or lack of love, whatever it might be, is surrendering all unto him. He just fills that up. It's just like your heart. And I was sharing this earlier too, and what the image that I got was a heart of the door of your heart being open, and all these things of either lack or things have been put on you, being released unto him, and he just brings in the fullness of that love of every part of your heart and just starts to speak to you so gently, so loving. And before you know it, it's like this thing surfaced. Oh my gosh, what's that come from? I didn't know I had any resentment. Okay, I release resentment. And that's just being in this presence of love. And then it just expands from there. So I just want to encourage each and every one of you, if you've heard these things, I just always reiterate about being that childlike, just receiving, releasing, coming in the fullness of his love, and the intimacy of just being alone with him, building that relationship, that breathing deep within those regions from the top of your head to the soles of your feet. You will begin to see such a change in your life. If you haven't already, I know some of you already have, but there are those that still, it's okay. We walk it out day by day, expanding, recognizing, and knowing our ground in authority as he has shared of who we are in him and what we're called to. So I just pray right now, I thank you, Yeshua, for the time that we have had. Thank you for speaking deep within the hearts of those that have been on the call, of your precious sons and daughters, that they grow into a deeper awareness of your love for them, coming into truth of your word that's within them. Even now, of things that may be being released off of them, even now physically, things are going on in the mind, in the heart, within their bodies, in family, in loved ones, concerns. Just lifting off of them and move into a greater place of your love, surrender. And as they go about their week, thank you for covering them, protecting them, opening doors wide that no man shuts. shut doors that no man can open. Thank you for your love. Thank you for all that you are, the attributes that they hold within them. Come into a great awareness of that. So we thank you for our time. Thank you for the words that you speak to me through their ears, vibrating down within them to move mightily in you and knowing awareness of your love. We give you praise, honor, and glory in your most precious name.
Yahweh Elohim, Etuim and Yeshua, Amun, Solkaun, that it is Ndiato. Amen.
Amen.
And please remember that even the words that Ina speaks and the things that I have shared with you, these are not things we're talking about in theory. We get to see the miraculous that people are encountering upon their own when they engage in these things. It's not something Larry is doing or Ina is doing or Pamela or Andy or any one of these people that are working within this process to serve. It's not what we are doing. It's when people embrace this understanding that it is God first, and they embrace the understanding that God's breath dwells within them, and they embrace the understanding that they need to invest in that nature, that revelation of God's presence within them. Miraculous things are happening for people on a daily basis. And we want this for each and every one of you.
Yes.
And I know I can speak for Ina in saying that we love you all dearly and are present to serve in the fullness of love. And we trust and know that even as we release desires of our heart into God, they're already manifested in a way that are larger than what you think you desire, because God holds them already complete within the perfect nature of her design, of his holy wisdom. Seek God, you will move forward in clarity and be joined with the nature of blessing and all increase that God has in position for you. So I offer thanksgiving for our time this week. Please look for the email. It will provide the link to this recorded session. And please share that with your friends as well. Share the emails if you want to with friends. We are here to serve in the fullness of God's love. We serve together within this walk, and I know that God has established this, and there are many things coming in these days ahead, and we are grateful that you are here with us.
Yes,
have a blessed and holy night, an amazing week, to find the miraculous that resides within you with each and every breath you receive.
Yes.
Take care and be blessed.
We love you.
Okay.